YouTube. Good morning. Well, I had another project I was going to do, so I figured I'd pull the camera out. And today I'm going to be making lip balms out of beeswax and propolis. It's a very easy recipe, but it's a little bit complicated to make and maybe even a little bit overwhelming on how to do it. So I figured I would take you along with me and show you how I do it, and then you could deviate these recipes and take it your own way. So the process is fairly straightforward, and the most important thing about lip balm, and if you've ever put on a chapstick, is the consistency after it cools. If you've ever taken like a really, really soft chapstick and you spread it on your lips, or you put your finger in a little cup and it's too mushy, it's too greasy. But if you've ever used like a really, really hard chapstick, it's almost like you gotta smear it, or dig it out with your finger really, really hard. So the balance of wax to oil is the variable that makes a really, really good beeswax balm. So I use a simple recipe to deviate from, and it is 1 part beeswax to 2 parts oil. And the variables on the oil are how I essentially have tweaked this recipe. And if it doesn't come out perfect for you, play with that consistency. Higher beeswax, lower oil, higher oil, lower beeswax to make the balm softer or harder. But generally, the recipe is 1 part to 2 parts, and then a few flavorings that you don't really even include in that. It's kind of to taste. But for example, 1 ounce of beeswax will be the 1 part today. So basically just weigh out 1 ounce of beeswax, and that's about how much it looks like, just so you know. It's a little handful. And then 2 parts of oil. And the oils I use, and you may need to buy these separately, I use Shea butter, and it comes in this is kind of the most exotic one I use. Exotic meaning you're not going to buy it at the grocery store. Shea butter has this consistency of kind of like a gritty lard kind of a consistency. And then coconut oil. And coconut oil you can get anywhere. And those of you that use coconut oil, you might realize that this goes to liquid at warm room temperatures. So if you've ever put this like in your kitchen and the kitchen got hot, you might know it goes to liquid. But the shea butter has a higher melting point than the coconut. So the coconut, if you choose to use this oil, while it is a solid here today, at 75 degrees out here in Jacksonville, is solid, at about 80 to 85, it does start to turn into a liquid. So this is gonna be my 2 parts. 1 ounce of shea butter and 1 ounce of coconut oil is gonna equal 2 ounces of oil. And then for the propolis, this is another little secret of mine, and this is how I recommend all of you guys do this. I save propolis that I pull out from the hive, and I put it in a consumable alcohol. If you put it into like isopropyl alcohol, you really can't consume isopropyl. But if you put it in like a vodka or a grain alcohol, it is still edible. But the grain alcohol actually acts as kind of a releasing agent to break down the propolis. And you can probably see here, I have it in a jar, and it's kind of this gooey mush, very similar to like when you scrape propolis on a very, very warm day in the apiary. And that just kind of helps it kind of dissolve at the boiling temperatures. And then flavors. So rosemary and peppermint oil are very, very popular. If you use rosemary, you might want to throw a little bit of peppermint, just peppermint, in a tiny amount of this, 25 drops or so in this recipe. This is another one of vitamin E oil that's used. And this is the one I'm going to warn you about. It's magical for chapped lips. This is lanolin. And lanolin is very frequently used for breastfeeding mothers to help with the breasts kind of not get too chapped when they're just starting to breastfeed. It is a very, very well-known product for that, but it's a little stinky. So if you use lanolin, don't use much of it. I even wrote on here, use sparingly, smelly. That was so I didn't forget this on the last time. So the vitamin E, the flavors, and the lanolin are not included in that 1 part to 2 parts. So you're just using these for a little bit of a tweak, and or the propolis also is not in there. So you're just gonna use a tiny little 1/4 teaspoon of this or so for flavor and aroma. But So let's go. If I break this video up in different sections, it's because I had to wait on something to heat up or something like that, but I'll try to take you with me and Typically I use a double boiler, and I've already got this boiling on my induction plate. And I use a wide mouth jar because ultimately what we're going to end up doing, and I should have mentioned this earlier, is putting these balms into these little kind of, you'd stick your finger in here, the little dishes, and of course, tubes. You can buy these on eBay. You can probably get them on Amazon. They are not very expensive, and when you buy them, you buy them by the bags, and you end up having more than you'll ever need. To get the liquid in the tube, you need some sort of large syringe because it's just too difficult to pour accurately. So these are the other tools you might need. You can probably get it in these with a tiny little teaspoon. So I've got my double boiler going over here, and I'm going to go ahead and get 1 ounce of wax. I've already pre-measured this, and get that melting. And remember, if this recipe doesn't work out for you, increase the beeswax to harden it up and increase the oil ratio to soften it up. Another little tip I'll give you here, if you're kind of a garage chemist like I am, and your significant other doesn't like you using the teaspoons from your shop, whenever you go to a garage sale or an estate sale, take a lap through the kitchen, and there is usually always, for a quarter, all the measuring teaspoons you would use that you can then make disposable. So I just have these bags of utensils that I save for times like this when I know I'm going to make a mess, especially a mess with like an oily type of a mixture. So as this heats up, I'll be right back and show you the rest. Okay, we're back. That was about 10 minutes in a double boiler for very, very thick wax. If your wax was shaved up or smaller, it would take much less time in a double boiler to heat that up. But I can just kind of show you melted beeswax. That's all that is. Back in the double boiler. Okay, let's get our oil in there. So here's 1 ounce of shea butter. It's going to melt much faster. And I've already measured this out, but just so you can see it, this is 1 ounce of coconut oil in a tablespoon, so it looks like it's almost like a tablespoon and a half, but go ahead and do it by weight. That way we got our measurements right. If you wanted to adjust it, you need to know exactly how much you put in there. So if it's too soft this time, then you need to know to use a little less of this coconut or shea butter. Okay, so I'm putting that in there. So now we've got our 1 part wax and our 2 parts oil in there, and then using 2 different types of oil, coconut oil and shea butter, and just going to stir this up with a little popsicle stick to keep that melting. Now, while this is melting, our other ingredients, other than flavor, e-oil, if you dare, a little bit of lanolin, and propolis that is either very granularized or is in a liquid form in the spirits. If you have propolis and you want to grind it up or smash it up, maybe put it in the freezer and then hit it with a hammer inside of a bag, you need to get it very, very small. If you put large chunks of solid propolis, it'll take forever to melt at this temperature. So you do need to break down the propolis a little bit before you do it. So I'm just going to use a little 1/4 teaspoon of each of these in this mixture so I don't overdo it. And get this going in here. This propolis I'm putting in first because obviously it needs to kind of go into solution. And then the e-oil is edible, and I think it's 25 drops equals a 1/4 teaspoon. I've done that measurement before, so I'm just using the 1/4 teaspoon for the measurement here. And I am going to use lanolin because I have it, and it is magical, but I think I'm going to keep the smell down with the rosemary and the peppermint to my liking this time. And I'm just going to use a little 1/4 teaspoon of that too. All right, so those are the extra 3 ingredients. Now, propolis, e-oil, lanolin if you have it. Now the rosemary is potent, so don't overdo it. This is going to be mostly peppermint with a little bit of rosemary. So I'm going to do about 10 drops. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, so that's all the rosemary I'm going to do. Just tiny hint of aroma there of the rosemary oil. And then the peppermint. Keeping the oil separated. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22. All right, 25. So I did 25 peppermint, 10 rosemary. Maybe I'll like it, maybe I won't, but I definitely wanted more peppermint than rosemary, and that was my intent, but I did want a hint of the rosemary to knock down the smell of the lanolin. So once you've got those in there, all you have left is getting it to the temperature and then putting it into the vials that you've chosen. You can put it in almost anything. You don't have to buy these fancy little things, but it does kind of feel like more of a commercial product. Not that we're trying to make a commercial product. When you put it in something that's purpose-built for this. So I'm just gonna kind of show you where I am while we're doing this. I got a little bit more heating to go. So I'm gonna go ahead and continue to heat this up and stir it up, and I'll be right back. All right, now it's all melted down, and here's what it looks like. That was very quick. It didn't take me very long. Of course, just breaking up the shea butter and getting it into a liquid. This is the moment of truth. Now, I do have a couple of tips for this section. Have your vials or your tubes ready, and have your lids off, have everything set up, because depending on the temperature outside and how quickly this stiffens up, you don't want to kind of be reheating this in the middle of your vial. And if you are using these tubes, speaking from experience, they don't stand up when you need them to. So put them in something that's holding. You could probably put a bunch of them with a rubber band and then they would stand up together, but you need to hold them vertically. Otherwise, when you're fumbling with a hot liquid in a vial and they fall over and make a mess. And then, again, by experience, this is a paint tarp cloth on here. You're gonna make a mess possibly, so be prepared for that. But this is basically the point, and we are ready. So it is a liquid balm. It is oil and wax, so you kind of do need to keep it mixed up. I could probably try to pour this in some of these larger vials just to show you it's possible. All right, that went pretty well into the 3 large ones. I'm just going to move those out of the way. Let me get you a little bit of a, this is just a, you can buy these cheap. You know, if you don't have some sort of syringe, this part is not gonna work very well. This is a little stiff, so I'm gonna go ahead. That worked. Perfect. All right, so there are my tubes, and it looks like I'm gonna have some extra, so I'm gonna need to pull out some more tubes, which is kind of what I meant when I said you need to be ready. All right, that looks like about one more, and I'll use one of these larger vials just for the bulk, and we should be done. All right, so that is how it works. Now, let them cool, don't heat them up too much, and you are gonna have some great beeswax, propolis lip balm. Let me go over the recipe one more time. I will have the recipe in the description if you watch this far down. If I ever tweak this recipe, I will keep the description updated. As you know, I can't update a video very easily, so I'll update the description. But the important part of the recipe is 1 part beeswax, and we used 1 ounce today for this amount. 2 parts oil, and for the oils, I chose to use coconut oil and shea butter, 1 ounce of each. You could change the oils up based on your flavor, but the important thing to remember, like I talked about at the beginning, the balance of oil and wax is the softness of the balm at the end. And then I added some vitamin E oil, and this is edible. So you buy little vials of this. I got this at CVS, and I did dare to use a little bit of lanolin. Lanolin is a little bit smelly, so if you use this, it is great for your lips, for your skin, but it is a little smelly. And I chose to use rosemary, 10 drops, and I chose to use peppermint at 25 drops for the aroma and the flavor. Melt it in a double boiler, get it to the right consistency, set your tubes and your vials up, and you're ready to go. So I hope this helps. If you got any comments, leave them below. Let me know what you think. I've done this, oh, guess what? Propolis. I did forget the propolis. I have all my stuff set out. And I did use a tiny little 1/4 teaspoon, the same amount of vitamin E oil as propolis, because this also is from the Hive. Yeah, let me know what you think below. Hope you enjoyed this type of content. If you do, please let me know. Have a great day.